president has said, Shannon, we're going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes.
The American stands with you, and the world stands with you.
Well, they have effectively a blank check policy.
That's not a fact. That's not a fact.
Joe Biden is in Ukraine on this President's Day. Jonathan Kirby is talking about the Ukrainian blank check. So is Ron DeSantis. Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, is talking about the Chinese balloon. And New York City is talking about dogs being able to fit in bags on the subway. A lot going on. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go.
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Monday, President's Day, I think. I'm pretty sure it's a federal holiday today. What is it? February 20th, the year of our Lord 2023. Thanks so much for tuning in. On this episode of Daily Caller Live, President Biden made surprises this morning going to Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, as the United States continues to give a bajillion dollars to the country. So that's, I guess, where we'll have to start. And also, because this picture is hilarious, President Biden and Volodymyr Zelensky embrace each other in the capital of Kiev, Ukraine. One is a sugar mama and one is a sugar daddy. Actually, wait, no, I lied. Who's the recipient of the sugar daddy's money? What is that? A sugar baby? I think that's what's. Anyways, that's what this picture looks like a lot. But Joe Biden made a surprise visit to Ukraine. Got in this morning, yesterday morning. The time difference is a lot. It's like on the other side of the world, therefore the other side of the clock. Interesting. Wow. Already with the comments here, Dennis says, Biden, maybe the big man gets 10% of anything that goes to Ukraine. I think we're about $200 billion in. We got a clip from Fox Sunday with Shannon Bream talking to John Kirby about how long we're going to stay involved. But also, this is a huge point. A lot of people already commenting here, talking about Joe Biden in Ukraine. Everyday viewer Ryan being one of them. Joe Biden didn't go to East Palestine, Ohio, but decided to go to Ukraine instead. It's not a good optics situation. And a lot of people on the right side of the aisle are pointing that out, probably justifiably so. At the same time, I've never actually understood why presidents need to go places. I don't know. Maybe it's better when you see something on the ground. Maybe I'll have to travel more to understand why the president needs to see what's happening on the ground. Because anytime the president does visit, they visit in an area that's super cleaned up. I'm thinking of when Joe Biden went to El Paso, Texas, and they cleared the street of all the homelessness. They didn't send him to anywhere that actually had part of the problem going on at the border. So I don't know. But a lot of people are upset about that, and justifiably so. Yeah, what's going on in East Palestine, Ohio, apparently in Joe Biden's mind takes a backseat to what's going on in Ukraine. Here are some of the remarks President Biden made in Ukraine. We'll get to the John Kirby stuff, but I also want to play this DeSantis clip that just aired on Fox's morning show. Which really, really kind of signals the direction of the 2024 presidential election. Anyways, watch this clip of the president in Ukraine, and we will discuss on the other side. Check it out.
1 year ago, the world was literally at the time bracing for the fall of Kiev. Seems like a lot longer ago than a year, but think back to that year. Perhaps even the end of Ukraine. You know, 1 year later, Kiev stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. The American stands with you, and the world stands with you.
All right, couple things to point out here. Look, we're not going to get into the whole policy of Ukraine and all this sort of stuff, but I do want to get into the politics domestically around sending basically a blank check to the city of Ukraine. To the city of Kiev, the country of Ukraine. Here's what I thought was fascinating about this. You saw the cadence of the president talking there. He's a very, very old man. He's 80 years old, flying across the world. Even though it's private, the jet lag has to kill you. But that was much, much slower and worse, in my opinion, than he sounded during the State of the Union address, which leads me to believe that there's some sort of drug that they're giving him, and this is not a new idea, but there's some sort of drug they're giving him to make him tip-top on top of it, sharp as a tack, for the speeches that do matter. And for this particular thing, they did not do that, because you can't give those types of drugs to people every single day, especially if they're suffering from brain defaults, brain faltering, aging. But the bottom line here is Joe Biden didn't sound as good as he does when it really, really counts. But the world is watching, and we'll see how it plays out. Now, here's the thing that I want to talk about politically, domestically. With the 2024 election, next year, and with all of the political candidates on the Republican side, and probably even some on the Democrat side, jumping in sooner than later, it is interesting to see how the voting bloc is going to go. I think the first Republican debate is in July, if I'm not mistaken. And as of right now, Donald Trump is officially in, Nikki Haley is officially in. And of all of the prospective people to get in, one, Ukraine is a huge topic. We've sent about $200 billion to Ukraine to fight Vladimir Putin, which is a lot of tax money, and a bunch of people, especially on the conservative side of the aisle, are saying that's too much. Let's cut it off. Now, regardless of how big of a percentage it is, it's not small. And even if it's 20% of Republicans that are let's cut it off, the only person of the prospective Republican candidates that are saying, hey, we need to stop sending money to Ukraine, has been Donald Trump. Like him or not, that's the only person on the Republican side of the aisle who is running for president. Now, there's obviously Congress people and senators, but the only prospective presidential candidate saying cut this off immediately has been Donald Trump. And even if it's only about 20% of the Republican Party that says, hey, cut it off, that's a plurality. That's enough to get Trump through the primaries. So what I've been curious about is to see if the potential Republican candidates are going to start saying similar things so that he doesn't have this, Trump doesn't have this as a runaway issue. And that happened today on Fox when Ron DeSantis said this. This is all leading up to this clip of Ron DeSantis now taking the stance that Donald Trump is supposedly or seemingly taking on Ukraine as the current president, Joe Biden, meets with Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kiev. Watch this, and then again, we'll discuss the domestic politics on the other side. By the way, if you haven't already, would really, really appreciate you clicking the little like button down here and the little share button that's over in this corner over here somewhere. Would really, really appreciate you doing so. You wouldn't imagine how much it helps out, especially if you're watching on Facebook. I know this streams in 20 different places. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that, would really appreciate that. And watch this. This is a little bit longer of a clip, but I think it's important to add to the discussion of what this 2024 primary, especially on the GOP side, is going to be like. Check it out.
Well, they have effectively a blank check policy with no clear strategic objective identified. And these things can escalate, and I don't think it's in our interest to be getting into proxy war with China getting involved over things like the borderlands or over Crimea. So I think it would behoove them to identify what is the strategic objective that they're trying to achieve. But just saying it's an open-ended blank check, that is not acceptable.
So, Governor, what does a win look like for us in Ukraine, for Ukraine?
Well, I think it's important to point out, the fear of kind of Russia going into NATO countries and all that and steamrolling, that has not even come close to happening. I think they've shown themselves to be a third-rate military power. I think they've suffered tremendous losses. I got to think that the people in Russia are probably disapproving of what's going on. I don't think they can speak up about it for obvious reasons. So I think Russia has been really, really wounded here. And I don't think that they are the same threat to our country, even though they're hostile. I don't think they're on the same level as a China.
Right. Governor, you're doing something very important. You're announcing a tour.
Interesting. So DeSantis is announcing a pro-police tour. That was another part of that clip that we didn't need to bring. But the bottom line here is that it would appear that the most formidable opponent of Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, is now taking the side of a sizable percentage of the Republican Party, saying, look, there needs to be a clear and definitive definition of what it means to have, quote unquote, won in Ukraine. Again, the only presidential candidate, or at least prospective presidential candidate, because only two are official yet, who's been saying that outwardly, loudly, has been Donald Trump. So we'll see how that shakes out. Now, just sticking very, very briefly on Ukraine, just for a quick second, I want to play this really quick. This is Shannon Bream on the Fox Sunday show, talking to John Kirby about the Ukrainian war. And he says something that is completely counter to, now, obviously this guy works for President Biden, not for DeSantis or Trump. But he says something that I think a lot of Republicans are concerned about, rightfully so. Watch this. This is an exchange again on Fox Sunday, talking about the U.S.'s unending support for Ukraine. Watch this.
On Capitol Hill, and there's going to be another fight over another round of aid. We're about $200 billion into this so far. There are questions about where the U.S. commitment ends to this. I mean, we had a couple of lawmakers just return and say, Congressman Garamendi was one of them who said, I think this is a year from now going to be still going on, this exact same war.
We don't know. Again, we would like to see it end now. And certainly we want to see it end on terms that are satisfactory to the Ukrainian people and to President Zelensky, so that they remain a whole, free, sovereign, independent state. And independence is an ideal that all Americans can get behind and understand. We'd like it to end soon as possible. My goodness, nobody wants to be sitting here a year from now talking about the second anniversary of war. But as the president has said, Shannon, we're going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. And he means that, as long as it takes.
Oh, boy. Okay, so there you have it. Spokesperson for the administration says, well, the president says it's going to take it as long as it takes, which is the problem that a lot of conservatives / financial hawks, fiscal hawks, are complaining about. Shannon Bream said it there, about $200 billion in. Going to be wild here coming up in this 2024 presidential election. Let's see. A lot of these sorts of comments. Meantime, Ohio needs you and you're not helping in the USA. David says, don't worry about Ohio. Let's see. Rights Constitutional. I don't believe that's your real name. Says, give aid to Ohio. Wendy says, send help to Palestine, Ohio instead of Ukraine. That seems to be the sentiment among a lot of people watching this broadcast. So, I can't say I disagree with that. That's an interesting move to make for the president. Speaking of interesting, this we won't belabor on this, because I just thought that this was so freaking funny that the president of the United States, especially now knowing that he was in transit to Ukraine when this tweet went out, is so hilarious. For those of you who aren't, I mean, I feel like this is like common knowledge, but kind of like a peek behind the curtain at like a lot of these, big wig political government official people. None of them run their own Twitter account. Joe Biden doesn't run his own Twitter account. Interestingly enough, Donald Trump did. It was no secret that he tweeted whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. But like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, I would even imagine, they don't run their own Twitter accounts, especially if they're ancient. They've got somebody tweeting for them. In Joe Biden's case, I believe it is a disgruntled 22-year-old intern that when they're mad about something, will tweet it from the president's account. Yesterday, the president of the United States tweeted this. With East Palestine in mind, the quote hasn't begun yet, but with the disaster in Ohio in mind, with the border crisis in mind, with what's going on in Ukraine in mind, with the price of eggs, with inflation as a whole, with all of those problems in mind, the sitting president of the United States sent out a tweet that said this: "We're working to ban surprise resort fees that hotels tack on to your bill. These fees can cost up to $90 a night at hotels that aren't even resorts. It just isn't right." With everything going on, this is what we're tweeting here from the President of the United States. Okay. I don't know, man. Priorities, I guess. But I won't spend a ton of time on that. We'll get to this. This is kind of interesting, fascinating. Where did it go? There we go. Kind of moving on from the Ukrainian story, but also remaining on foreign policy. Secretary of State Antony Blinken went on like a bunch of the talk shows. He was on Chuck Todd's show. He was on, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on all of the other names of the show. He was all over the place this weekend on all of the Sunday talk shows, talking about the Chinese balloon. So there is a security conference in Munich going on right now. Actually, I think it was like a couple days ago. And Secretary of State Blinken was there, and his Chinese counterpart was there. And they had like a little sidelines meeting about the Chinese balloon. And then Blinken went on all the talk shows over the weekend and talked about it. Chuck Todd on Meet the Press asked him, there we go, Face the Nation, Fox News Sunday. The names of all the other shows just popped back into my head, which is a thing that I'm noticing is happening more regularly. I wonder if that is an aging thing. Anyways, watch this. This is Chuck Todd talking to Blinken about the Chinese balloon. Again, still a foreign policy thing. And also you mentioned, Ron DeSantis mentioned in his clip that we played earlier that China is actually the bigger threat here. And we don't want to get in proxy wars with China. So speaking of China, here's Blinken on Meet the Press. Oh, by the way, if you haven't already, would really appreciate you clicking on the like button and the little share button, or let us know in the comment section what you think about what's going on with the federal government, especially from a foreign policy standpoint. Check this out.
I guess what I'm more concerned about is, what did he say to you? Number one, did it begin with an apology for the balloon?
Chuck, I don't want to characterize what he said. I don't think that would be appropriate, although I can tell you, no, there was no apology. But what I can also tell you is this was an opportunity to speak very clearly and very directly about the fact that China sent a surveillance balloon over our territory, violating our sovereignty, violating international law. And I told him quite simply that that was unacceptable and can never happen again.
Sorry about that. So the bottom line is Blinken says, I told him very, very forcefully that cannot happen again. There's a hilarious video that's like popping into my head right now that I should go find and maybe bring tomorrow. Oh, you know what? It's a clip from Veep. If you ever watched the show Veep on HBO, it is a brilliant TV series about the Vice President of the United States, and there's a clip in it where they're talking to some foreign government dignitary, and he said, it is hard to imagine that your stern wording and very disgruntled demeanor didn't affect global politics nearly as much as you would have thought. Bottom line is what they're trying to say is harsh words and nasty tones don't really go all that far when it comes to world superpowers like China, which Antony Blinken, therefore, or the Secretary of State said, I gave him a stern talking to. Okay, we'll see how that goes. But he kind of went on to talk about, I thought this next part of this clip was pretty interesting as well. One of the things that's fascinating about this, when you watch the Sunday shows, if you watch the Sunday talk shows, and you watch guys like Chuck Todd, I don't know if it's actually in this clip. This is another thing that you should just watch out for. when government people get on the TV, they ramble. They ramble a lot, and it's intentional. Rather than just answer the question, they'll go on for minutes at a time to avoid the interviewer asking other questions that they don't want to answer. I'm not sure if this clip is in here, but just keep in mind when you're watching these types of shows, watch out for that sort of thing. Watch how long these people go in order to avoid answering tougher questions. But anyways, it goes on to continue talking about, I believe this is about our relationship with China, but I forget what this next clip is specifically. Watch this.
To share our very real concerns about China's support for Russia in that war. And what we've seen in over the past years is, of course, some political and rhetorical support, even some non-lethal support, but we are very concerned that China is considering providing lethal support to Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. And I made clear that that would have serious consequences in our relationship.
Yeah, okay, so he's talking about the proxy war that DeSantis was talking about, that Shannon Bream was talking about, a lot of stuff going on revolving around Ukraine, Russia, and does China get involved in support of Russia, and then do we get... It's a jumbled mess, and unfortunately, I don't have a lot of confidence in the quote-unquote leaders that are making any of the decisions. Okay, moving on to much, much lighter fare here. This I thought was hilarious, seeing this over the weekend. So New York City instituted a new rule about dogs on the subway. I haven't really been someone who is shy about sharing their disgruntledness or their irritation with pets all over the place. Like, I'm walking through the grocery store the other day, and like at the deli, where there's a bunch of like open, meats, egg salads. There's a bunch of everything you can get at the deli is just kind of open. It's not packaged. It's not, whatever. And there's this big old dog and his owner standing like right at the glass. I'm like, where are we? Are we in a store or are we in a barn? So I'm not a huge fan of animals, pets in general, wandering around society as if they're just supposed to be there. I love pets. I have pets. I love animals. But, let's consider keeping them at home. And they don't need to be in the shopping cart next to other people's future meat at the deli. Anyways, I'd be curious to see what do you guys think about that. Are there too many pets in too many places? Like the airline thing, like these people bringing these big old dogs / animals on the airlines. Anyways, New York City, a lot of people were fed up with that too, thinking that they're these just huge dogs that are just on the subway that, you think they're under control, but, who knows what can happen. So New York City instituted a rule where the dog has to be able to fit inside of a bag in order to be able to ride the subway. Now, lots of problems with that rule, even though I am pro not having wildlife around populated areas. This is a stupid rule for a lot of reasons. One, it appears that they didn't define the size of a bag or what a bag means, as now many New Yorkers are posting photos of dogs that quote unquote fit in bags to comply with the new rules, and whether or not that's a bag trying to comply with the new rule. Watch this clip. This I think was pretty funny. This guy has this massive dog in what can only be tangentially defined as a bag, and the conductor's yelling at him. The guy's like, dude, I'm following the rules. Watch this. And then we've got some other photos of makeshift bags and the dogs inside them. Check this out.
Yeah, I can fight for letting you on my drink. But it's the rule. That's not a bag. That's not considered a bag. That's not considered a bag. That's a bag. What is a bag? I'm sorry.
This is some photos of some dogs in their owners' bags, again, to comply with the rules here. I don't know if you heard, it was hard to hear that guy, but the subway guy was yelling at the dude with the dog in the bag. And yeah, look at it, look at this. Does this count as a bag? I genuinely don't know. Let's see. Wow. Okay. Let me. I'm looking at some of these comments, and there's a lot of people that look. Jeff says you're 100% correct. I added the correct part. He said you're 100% emoji. Too many folks bringing their pets where they don't belong. But then Julie says this, and I also don't disagree with this. Julie says most dogs are cleaner and nicer than people on the subway. You have a point, Julie. That's a very, very good point. There are also, if you've ever been on a New York City subway, you're guaranteed, not even likely, you're like guaranteed to run into someone who is less clean than the bottoms of your shoes and probably on meth, making them not somebody who is, one would call, civil. Debbie says that won't work. Dog leashes, maybe a muzzle, maybe. Let's see this. This one, I don't know, Paula. You know, I appreciate you watching the show, but I don't know if I agree with you here. I feel the same about pets in the pet store. I think if there's one place that pets are okay being, it's the pet store. But just again, not in the food market. But yeah. This is look at this. Look at this dog in this bag. I don't understand it. I don't understand how the people. I think what I'm really getting at here is how New York City Council people made the decision, or whoever made this rule, whatever bureaucracy devised this rule, thought that this would be like, oh yeah, this will fix the problem entirely. We're not going to define what a bag is. We're not going to define the size of the bag. We're just going to say they need to be in a bag. And then that's when you have people doing this, that's adorable, by the way, but come on, not going to work. Oh, wow, there's a lot more comments in there than I would have thought talking about the dogs in the places. But anyways, that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. Let's see. Well, Friday night. So it's fascinating. I'm still I guess kind of getting used to the fact that a bunch of people watch the show, by the way, and I really appreciate all of you that do. But there were 3 different people that showed up to the comedy show that I was at on Friday. I did a couple of minutes opening for a buddy of mine, Kayvon, who is hilarious, by the way. Go check him out, Kayvon Comedy. But I was open for him in La Jolla, and a couple people, I mentioned that on Friday, and a couple people commented saying, hey, I live in La Jolla, this is near San Diego, California. I'll come see it. And they showed up, and it was awesome. And it was great, actually getting to meet people who watch this show in real life come into a comedy show. And so maybe, I'll start to, gosh dang it, what is this, day 4, where I say I'm going to get an itinerary of where I'm going to be, and I just forget to do it. But maybe today will be the day. Next week, throughout the entire month of March, we've got 15 different dates. So if you are in any of those areas, I'll start mentioning it more, because I do really like meeting you all in real life. It's fun, and I'm excited that I'm excited that get to see people IRL. But anyways, that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. I've got to play one of these days, maybe tomorrow too. Tomorrow, okay, we're going to talk about this ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, the Bing GPT. If you're not hip to this story, there is an artificial intelligence, an AI developed by Microsoft that fell in love with a reporter from the New York Times, and it has been all the rage in the tech world. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But also maybe tomorrow I'll bring up this clip that has gone nuts on Instagram that I will, maybe talk about a little bit more. I don't know. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. We're going to end it. That's that. Well, that'll do it for us today. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. I'll stop rambling and not knowing what I'm talking about. My brain's going 100 different miles in a bunch of different directions. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. God bless America.